Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Marvel-ous Movie Mondays. Sorry for the Star Wars set. It's still owned by Disney. It's just I am too lazy right now to change everything over. While in the midst of doing a million different things, including trying to keep this podcast alive. Kelsey, how are you doing?
I'm good. I didn't realize we were hanging by a thread, Dill.
I am hanging by a thread. Not my life. Like I am very mentally sane, but or healthy. I feel
Okay.
it could change any minute, but just overload, busyness, working, and all that shit. It's just a lot.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
bouncing back and forth to the city to Jersey. Because also I moved into a new place. It's still not set yet, so that's why I'm doing the show here because I
Mm,
do not have the means to do it there yet. But Kelsey's all moved in, and she's got a great looking set there, some great lights, nice shelf. Very happy that she's found her home. Um,
thank you. Me
so
too.
speaking of home and family, I guess this is a good segue to today's topic, and that is because we don't have Miss Marvel for another week. We will have that next week for you, and we also don't have anything else to talk about. So we were like, let's talk about some older Marvel movies. This is a Marvel podcast, not an MCU podcast. So we are like, yeah, let's talk about the Fantastic Four movies because there may or may not be an appearance from one of them in a movie that might be in theaters right now. Maybe I said maybe. I didn't confirm nor deny.
Who knows?
Um,
Elizabeth
so
also never met him, so who
yeah,
knows?
true. Oh, Kelsey's giving away even more details. No, but in honor of a specific just occurrence, whether it be on screen or not, we said let's look at the Fantastic Four movies, not just the original from 2005, not just the sequel, but also the 2015 film, also called Fan Four Stick. Well, branded as Fan Four Stick, and I have a fun story to tell. The thing is, with Fantastic Four 2015, I have less to say about the actual movie and more about just like my experience with it. So I can't wait to talk
Okay.
about it. But let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start, as Maria von Trapp would say.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with Fantastic Four 2005. The most I think it's the highest rated of all the three on Rotten Tomatoes, which may or may not be saying something. But yeah, the Tim Story film from 2005. Kelsey, did you write any synopsises for these or just kind of general thoughts?
No, I did write a synopsis.
Great, take
Would
it
you like
away,
to hear
Kelsey. Tell
it?
us. Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Oh, awesome. Good, I'm glad. If you didn't, I probably would have said it anyway.
Okay.
Okay, so Fantastic Four came out in 2005, directed by Tim Story. And here's my synopsis. While on a mission in space, a storm alters the DNA of four astronauts, changing their lives for better or for worse. You
Yeah.
decide.
Yeah, and that's the basic premise for all the Fantastic Four comics, films. Supposedly what we're getting in the future. Yeah, it's a team up for great superheroes, or great by my. I think they're great in design. I think it's a fun batch. You have your strength, you have your flexibility, you have someone who can be invisible, but also like shoot these little force field thingies. And you got someone who sets on fire. It's a very eclectic bunch.
Hmm.
And many people have said that The Incredibles is the best Fantastic Four film ever made, because it kind of takes a similar template. You have the stretchy one, you have the
Oh,
strong one,
yeah.
you have the little baby you can catch on fire, you have the invisible girl. Except they also add a guy who's really fast, so it's even better. And
Ooh.
maybe we should do Fantastic Fives from now on because these three movies flopped. This one not a flop financially. It was a commercial success, but it was still considered a flop critically. But Kelsey, you have not seen any of these films. This is one I've seen. I've
Hmm.
seen the 2015 film. I haven't seen Rise of the Silver Surfer, so we're both fresh to that. But as a first-time viewer, we're not going to spend all the time breaking down these scenes beat by beat by beat because people have seen these movies for a while now. But like, give your general thoughts if you have any segues to certain aspects of the film we want to talk about. We're going to keep it very lax and casual today because also it is tired and we're filming this late. And Kelsey spent the whole like last few hours watching two of these back to back. So like,
Yeah.
yeah. But what are your thoughts on this OG one? You got,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic Four is definitely fresh on the brain for me right now. I literally just finished the last one, the 2015 version,
Mm,
10 minutes ago.
right.
So, I went into this, I didn't really know much about the Fantastic Four, Dill. I didn't know their origin story. I didn't know how they came about. I
Mm.
I really didn't know much at all. I knew that Chris Evans was Johnny Storm and
Yeah.
Jessica Alba was Sue Storm, and that's about it.
Wow. Okay.
And
Cool.
yeah, so um I really enjoyed this movie. I really
Wow.
enjoyed the
Okay.
2005's Fantastic Four because I
Right.
think that it was like First of all, Chris Evans. Wow, man. I think these movies, I'm dead ass right now. I think they're his best work. Like
Really?
he was so enjoyable for me in both
Hmm.
these movies. And maybe it's because everything else kind of fell a little flat that he was just a standout.
Yeah.
But he like seriously stole
Yeah.
the show
Well,
for me.
let's talk about the casting first because I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Now, I've looked up the pronunciation of his name. I'm so sorry if I pronounce this wrong, but Yoan Griffith is his name. Reed Richards. Let's just call him
Yes.
Reed because that was the best I could do. He's a familiar face. He's in Titanic. He has a few scenes in Titanic, but like this was like his big main starring role.
Mm,
And then we have Jessica Alba, of course, as Sue Storm. Chris Evans is her brother Johnny Storm, and Michael Chiklis as Ben Grimm. That's your big four. You said Chris Evans was a standout. I do agree. I think his performance is probably the standout for sure. I do think the character itself, and we'll get into the characters later, but like I think he probably has the least to do in this movie. Like it
mhm,
always feels like the dramas around Reed and Sue or Ben, but not
mm.
really Johnny ever, and they kind of give him some
Hmm.
forced plots throughout. But like he always feels like the four of the four. You know what I mean? Like
Like
he's
an
always kind of like
afterthought, you mean?
not even an afterthought, but always like serve. He's a very supportive character rather than the lead, and
Hmm.
that's where I think he shines. And I do agree. I think he's very very good and charismatic. Um, I think Michael Chiklis also has a good grasp on his character. I mean, he's acting through all that makeup too, and you still can like feel
Yes.
all the emotions from him too.
Yeah, for
And then
sure.
the other two, I think what's interesting about Johan Gruffeld is that like I do think his lines are the most cringy across the series just because it's like he delivers a lot of the exposition and he's a scientist who's like, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that. Some of the
Mm,
line deliveries come across weird, but I think he fits the role well. And then we got Jessica Alba, who was not very much of an actress when she was this role. She was more cast because she was a pretty face. Do you
sure.
think? Do you think? Because I think she's a weak link, and not because she's less experienced or because she's a woman or anything like that. Like I just think her lines of dialogue are the hard. Her and Reed's dialogue lines are probably the hardest to like get right because Johnny, you just kind of have to have a little fun, be the bad boy, kind of easy. The Thing,
Mhm.
you have the most like actual like emotional material for, but these two characters, Reed and Sue, I think have the hardest job because of the writing.
Mhm.
And something about Jessica Alba's performance just never really clicked with me.
Mm.
And I don't know what that, and I hope she's not listening. But what are your thoughts on these four their performances? I gave like my blanket thoughts, but like these four, do
Yeah.
you think? I think they're for the most part well cast. It's just, do you think they actually give good performances?
It's funny that you say that about Jessica Alba because, I noticed that in the second film, I think she says something. Hold on, I wrote it down. Yeah, at some point, okay, so they do the bit kind of, I think, multiple times in the first movie, and then they do like a callback to it in the second movie where
Hmm.
because she gets invisible but you can still see all her clothes, she has to take all of her clothes off and essentially get naked in public.
Right.
And in the second movie, she has some throwaway line about like, oh, like why does this always happen to me? And I'm like, well, that's because you're Jessica Alba, my girl, and
Right.
obviously like you're the one that audiences who are probably mainly male are gonna want to be seen. Like, oh, she has to take off her bra in public so she can be Invisible Woman, like, and I'm like,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's the main reason why she was the weak link for you, Dill.
Oh yeah,
Honestly,
because I think the directors and the writers kind of used her, like you said, as like almost more of an object, which I hate to talk
yeah.
about, but early two
No, but
thousands, a lot of the
it's
time, women in
100%
action
valid.
movies, yeah, were like that. She was there to be the pretty eyepiece, where the rest of the characters were kind of doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
And I did make a mistake. She did act in television before this, so she was not new. She actually got a
Mm,
Golden Globe nomination for Dark Angel, which was a series she was on. But
mm,
in terms of films, this was like her second film or whatever. So like she's still, obviously growing to be a great actress, and I think she has done great stuff, especially later on in her career. But yeah, I just don't think this particular role served her well, especially because,
mm-mm,
like you said, the others are doing so well. Like Chris Evans is really putting in 110%. He, I think, understands the spirit of this type of movie the most, like in terms of like
mhm.
it is a comic book movie, and I think a lot of the dialogue is very cringy and cheesy, but I think when
Sure.
the actors know that and they really lean into that, it works. Like it works, the campiness. I think it's when they try to take it too seriously, it's really jarring. Um, And I think Chris Evans knows just how to tip that balance perfectly of like, let's give you the cheesiness and the campiness and make it feel like a comic book movie, but also like still give a good performance and try to make some reality out of it while not getting overly serious, which I think just Johnny in general has the ability to be a little bit more comedic than dramatic, which really helps, you know.
Yeah. And I definitely think that, like, I don't fault Jessica Alba for being like the
No,
quote
no.
unquote weak link. Like, I just fault the writing and the fact that, like,
Yeah. She
it
had the
was
least
like,
to work with.
okay,
Yeah.
he's the smart one, he's the strong one, he's the womanizer, and she's the girl. Like,
Yeah.
like that's how
Yeah.
it just kind of felt, like how it was
Mhm.
written and how it was, portrayed and all that. But
Yeah, and especially in like The Incredibles, like the women are like the most well-rounded in
mhm,
terms of characterization. Like Elastigirl and Violet, they have so much in their stories. So like it's capable. You can do a story, and we've seen many women superheroes. Like you can handle those stories very well, even in a team. And I think that's the kind of the shortcoming of the casting and just not the casting, but the performances, because I think she is the hardest material to work with, which kind of segues us to the writing itself. But um,
yeah,
yeah, and we could talk a little bit just like about the story in general and what we thought of it, because it is an origin story.
mhm,
Kind of, blanket, it's an origin story. You kind of have to set it up, but I like how they kind of set up these different relationships. Where their pasts kind of connect, and like who has an estranged past, who's still like close today. But I think the strength of the story, or the strength of the film, is not in the story. It's more in the these characters, and enjoying seeing them on the big screen as a unit for the first time,
mhm,
really, in a big studio Fantastic Four film. I think that's where the charm comes, and I think the action is well done. I don't think the effects are really that great anymore, but I think the action itself is creative. It does feel like a comic book movie. It's colorful, and I think it succeeds in that regard a lot. And those are like my biggest positives, is the way it looks. It feels fresh. It feels alive. It feels like there was actually some care put into it, even if the
yeah.
writing, like I've alluded to, kind of falls short for me. But please tell me what you think of any and all that.
Yeah, yeah, of course. So, yeah, I was just kind of like jotting down things as I was like putting
Yeah,
pieces
yeah.
together. I was like, okay, so I get that like Reed and Sue kind of have a history there. They had a messy breakup at some
Hmm.
point or another. Now she's kind of with this other guy. She's with Victor Von Doom. So I wonder who the villain's going to be. Um couldn't be him, right?
No.
And they're trying to like track the storm alters their DNA. Like, we'll talk about the 2015 version when we get there, but like it all, I I felt like it was an origin story that was kind of classic, but I didn't mind it. You know what I
No.
mean?
Yeah.
Like,
And
it definitely wasn't like original in any way, but I was just like, you know what? This is giving me all the information I need, and
mhm.
that's fine.
Yeah.
Because I'm still having a good time.
And I think it has to do with also the fact that this is pre MCU, where like it's still kind of, there's a charm to how they're kind of like figuring out the formula. You didn't have a lot of
Mhm.
superhero movies back then. And I also think another part of it is because it is a team, you have four origin stories, so you can tell four different stories. Even though I think Johnny is just kind of thrown in there, I don't think he really is given a lot of like own his own background. But
Interesting.
like yeah, you just kind of she's just kind of like, oh yeah, my brother's gonna pilot the ship, and then he shows up like after we've
Mm.
kind of established Sue and Richard, or Sue and Reed, and then Reed and Ben, and Ben's own thing. But I think the good
Sure.
thing is that you have four different characters. You can have four different origin stories, whereas when you have one character, sometimes an origin story is like, all right, checking the watch, all right, what's going on here, let's speed it up. Here you have
Yeah.
technically five, because if you count Doctor Doom also, like you have five different origin stories. So if one story feels a little tired, you transition to the next one, and then you transition to the next one. And I think that's what it does well. If it was just a story about the thing, it might be a little stale, because it's just the same thing. It's like, oh, he's sad, he doesn't fit in now that he
Mm.
looks different. His wife doesn't accept, or his fiance, wife or fiance doesn't accept him. All
Mhm.
this yada yada yada.
Yeah.
It might be a little too one note, but then you can transition to Johnny Storm, using his powers to make like cool motorcycle tricks, and then you can also
Yeah.
go back to Reed and Sue. So like I like that there are multiple avenues for origins rather than just one, but you still feel like the origin of every character. It doesn't, nothing feels really lost, which is good.
Yeah. It's funny, Dale, that you keep saying that like Johnny Storm is kind of like the outsider for you. For me, if I had to pick a weak link out of the four of them, I would say it was Reed Richards. He's
Ah,
supposed to
okay.
be the main guy, and
Right.
you never really you hear him say a bunch of smart things, but I feel like you never watch him do a lot
Hmm.
of smart things. Like you never see him kind of like, Tony Starking it with like, nanotechnology and robots around him
Right.
everywhere and like, you know, physically doing something like super sciency. Like
Hmm.
I had just finished watching these movies with, our friend and my roommate James. And like, I was like, I love how they just throw a bunch of like words together. They're like, we have to find the mitochondria and divide by the nucleus to get to the power source. And it's like they just string a bunch of like
Yeah.
sciencey words together. And as an audience, we're all like, yeah, they have to do that thing. But
Yeah.
like they could be saying nonsense and we just have no
And
idea.
James majored in science, so he's probably sitting there like, does that make sense?
No, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But and then
and that's a
even
good
when
point. Yeah.
he gets his power, granted, I think his power is probably the least interesting out of the four of them. Like, I think
Hmm.
Elastigirl is the only one who can really make like being super flexible and bendy interesting.
Hmm.
But for some reason, I just feel like he's not really showcased that much, like in the fight sequences and in the last epic battle. Like, I feel like he only does like one or two things, and then it's kind of up to the rest of the three of them, simply because like just being bendy and stretchy like doesn't really
Yeah.
serve them
Yeah,
much. Do you know
yeah.
what I mean?
I've never really considered that only because I know the comics. I know he is the leader, so my brain is
Mhm.
already there. But I do like
Sure.
that idea as a perspective of someone who did not know this unit and like feeling like the other three are more central figures to the overall story than him. And that's a good point because yeah, I feel like yeah he's got to be that linchpin, but they also make him a little too um grounded to where it's like there's not as much fun with this. There's not a
Mhm.
lot to explore there. It does seem like a lot of like Reed's stuff is with another character rather than on his own. That's like Reed and Sue or Reed and Ben. Two relationships that I think are done well, but
Mhm.
yeah, that's a really good point because yeah, like I said earlier, I don't think he gives a bad performance, but I think his material is probably the most noticeably like the moments where I notice it's the worst is when he's talking to Sue because I think just a lot of the dialogue just seems a little unnatural, and maybe it is just his delivery, and maybe
Sure.
it's the fact that like the other characters are so distinctly unique that like we latch onto them more than him. Um,
Sure.
and it's interesting because when we talked about Doctor Strange, oh sorry, or a movie that maybe this character might have appeared in, you were like, wait, he's the smartest man in the world, and that's the whole thing is that like he is the smartest man in the universe according to the comics, and I think even this movie doesn't fully explore that as it
Yeah,
should.
no.
And I think that'd be really cool if they did. Let's talk about the Thing real quick because we haven't talked a lot about him. I think this
Yeah.
is my favorite of the four characters, origin story wise. Like I loved what they did with this, the idea of not fitting in and all that stuff. Because I
Mhm.
feel like in Hulk, and I love the Hulk, he's my favorite. But I feel like in some of the movies, it's like he becomes Hulk, he's evil, and he just smashes a bunch of shit, and then you get a lot of the reflection from Bruce. But here he's living as the monster, and it's
Mhm.
it's like it's as if we got Professor Hulk off the bat. Like he's able to still make connections and comment on things and react human like even in this monster like form. And I
Mhm.
really like that, and those scenes where he is approaching Debbie and she gives the ring on the bridge back, and
Mm.
she also just like
Mhm.
is afraid of him and he has to hide in the dark with his with his trench coat and hat, which is so funny.
Mhm.
That stuff I think is the best stuff in the whole movie because I think Michael Chiklis plays it great, and I think
Mhm.
it's just it really works for making something more emotional and sentimental out of this fun comic book thing, because most of it is more upbeat and fun and comic booky and like ooh like look at what all we can do because a lot of the movies just them figuring out what the fuck their powers are and how they're going about it and making
Yeah.
funny puns and jokes based on them. um like fire puns and invisible puns and stretchy puns and rock puns, but like
Yeah.
I think this is the real dramatic core of the movie, which I really like.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Dill. His moments were like super heartbreaking, like that moment with the ring on the bridge. And like you think when like everyone's applauding him for like being like the hero, the savior, they're like, yeah, like, we're kind of accepting you to society now. Like you just saved these first responders, and you think, she shows up at the bridge to be like, you know what, maybe I can see past this because you're still a good guy at heart. and she just takes the ring off, puts it on the bridge, and you're just like, and then he can't even pick it up. He's desperately trying to pick it up, and you're just like, oh my God, kick a girl while she's down, why don't you? But I'll say, I've said it once on this podcast, and I'll say it again. You want to know what my favorite part of the thing was? Is that he was in a suit, and it was tangible and practical.
I was about to bring that up. Yeah.
And it wasn't CGI at all. It was very real, and it just made it so much more fun to watch.
And I think it makes the rest of the film severely dated because everything else isn't. And I think that's where it kind of loses me, and why I do spin more negatively on the movie, and we haven't talked about it yet, is the effects. I think the actual premise and the color is fine, but the actual effects look like shit. I mean, especially the stretchy
2005.
Effects. The stretchy effects look like shit. The invisible effects look god-awful. Victor Von Doom looks fine, but it's like the thing is so tangible, like you said, but nothing else is. So it just kind of feels a little out of place. Johnny Storm, not as much, only because fire is probably the easiest CGI to do. It's the easiest thing because you can put it over someone and it'll still look real or whatever. But the bendy stuff and the invisible stuff, it looked really, really bad and dated. And I watched this movie when I was a kid once or twice. It didn't look as bad, but now it's like, oh, it's glaringly bad. To the point where it's almost hard to watch it, and it becomes laughable, and where I almost wish it was a little more campy to then be something that you could like categorize in its own genre of like so bad it's good. But now it's kind of this weird gray area of like the story is kind of like competent, but the visuals are just so bad now in retrospect. And that's not a criticism. That's just what the visuals were. I love the prequels, the Star Wars prequels, but those visuals don't look great either. So it just, it's that era, that time period. We even saw a little bit with X-Men, but X-Men isn't doing as fantastical stuff, and I feel like they get away with it a little bit better. But yeah, that was a good point you made, though, because the thing, it's like you see when he's trying to pick up the ring, like it feels real, and yet you can still see his expressions through it, though, which I really like.
Yeah. So like while we're talking about Ben, I wrote down a few things, regarding him, where they first get back from space and like the incident and everything, and they're both kind of in like different like hospital rooms and whatever being treated, and Johnny Storm comes in, and it's a whole point POV shot. We're like in the perspective of Ben Grimm, and Johnny Storm's talking to him, and he's like, listen, like you had the best doctors, like they did the best that they could do, and he's like hyping up this whole thing just to be like, but unfortunately they couldn't fix your face. And he looks in the mirror and he's fine. And the entire time, even though it was the first time I had watched this movie, I was like, you know what, this was probably really fun for comic book fans to be like, oh, he probably looks like the Thing, he's gonna look like the Thing, and then for him to reveal that he's just like, he's been pulling a prank on him the whole time. So I did enjoy that moment. I had to make a note of that moment. And then another moment I made note of when it came to Ben was when he's talking to Sue, and he's like, you don't know what I'd give to be invisible. And it was just like another like, twist the knife, why don't you? Because you can see even through the mask and the makeup and everything that like Michael Chiklis is like totally tearing up in that moment, if not fully crying. And it was really powerful.
And then we got to talk about the fifth of the fantastic whatever, and that's Victor Von Doom. I think he's such a central figure in the comics, and such like a powerful, he's like Thanos level popularity in the comics. Like he is like one of the big villains of the Marvel comics. And I just think he's really underutilized here. Like I think he's annoying when he's Victor, and he's supposed to be. But usually as a villain, you're like, ooh, I can't wait to see what the villain does. I was like, get him off the screen. I just want to see these four. Like he annoyed me, and I don't blame Julian McMahon, but like the character annoyed me. Everything was Sue. Also because like Reed wasn't giving much of a reason either to be any better than Victor, but I just kind of disliked them both. And just the actual transformation into Doctor Doom, it just felt a little bland to me, just because we've seen so many movies, superhero movies, that I was like, it's kind of like a villain. He gets obsessed with the power, he becomes evil and starts blowing shit up. It's like it didn't seem as interesting, and I think that's a character where it can be a little bit more interesting if they dug a little deeper into it. But what are your thoughts on the villain, on Doctor Doom? What were your impressions?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Jill. Like I think like literally one of the things I wrote down was the villain is not very interesting. He was very lackluster. Like I didn't really understand what he was fighting for, what his motive was, because like he got affected the same way they did in the storm, except that his thing was like eventually going to kill him. Like his whole body was eventually going to turn into like that titanium something or other that
Yeah.
was consuming him, and he needed a treatment, but he also wanted like world domination, but I'm sure he also wanted like his power and money back because he had just gotten like, let go from the company he was working for. I was like, this guy's kind of like for me. Like
Yeah.
it's just you're not really leaving an impression.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'd honestly love it more if there was more of a like fighting chance when Sue is picking partners, because she never seems
Yeah,
invested in
sure.
Victor, to where when
Yeah.
Reed's trying to steal her away, it becomes an obvious choice, even though Reed is, as we both said, not that interesting.
Hmm.
It's very clear she should be with Reed, and I think that's funny because if I were to make this movie, I would have made Victor so charming, so charismatic, to where you're like, but maybe she should be with him. And then when he starts to go evil, it's like, oh, okay. And I just think, yeah, that love triangle just didn't work for me either. But
No, yeah, I
do you have
agree.
any other notes on anything else for this one? Because I've said my piece. But yeah, what else do you think about this?
Well, I did make a note that, I wrote down some lines that I just thought were funny. And
Okay.
during the moment where they're on the bridge and like the whole like bridge sequence, firefighter, all that sequence is happening at some point, they're like, Sue, like get invisible. And then she's trying to get invisible, but you can see her clothes. And then like she reappears and now she's in a bra and underwear. And Chris Evans just goes, I'm going to need therapy. And I can't say enough good things about what I thought
Yeah.
about Chris Evans in this movie,
Mhm.
because I think that he just throwed. Hello?
Throw.
Can I English? I'm confused. He threw away all of his lines like so perfectly. Like it was almost just like this character just felt so effortless for him.
Mhm.
And I know that he's, probably a sweetheart in person, but this douchebag womanizer he was playing was just like, it just felt like so natural. Like it just
Yeah.
came so easy for him. So I had to write that down. And right underneath that is Chris Evans is the best part. And then right underneath that is, I think I'm kind of really into this. And I was like, I think I'm actually really enjoying myself with this movie.
Nice.
Um, I
I
will
and I
say
will
that
I will
though.
oh, I just want to say one last
No,
thing.
go
Like
ahead.
I don't think he's a bad character by any means. I just don't think he has a lot of
A
an
lot
arc in this.
to do.
Like
Sure,
he's
yeah.
very much like Sue's brother who's along for the ride, just happens to be in this mess, and that provides for some great moments, obviously. But like I always feel like it's always Sue and Richard's story, or Sue and Reed's story is like the central story in these movies, and then Ben has his own thing going on. But like Johnny was just kind of having fun with his powers,
Hmm.
and there's nothing wrong with that. I honestly wish it was more of
Yeah.
that, like just having fun and goofing around with their powers, which we get a little bit of in the next movie, which we'll talk about. But yeah,
I think they must have realized at some point that like people were like Chris Evans must have been the standout for more than just me in 2005. Like I think that he
yeah,
was probably like the fan favorite because I feel like he
definitely
has way more to do and has more of an arc in the second movie,
right. Yes,
which I greatly appreciated. I was
I
like,
agree.
yes, this is what I wanted.
Yeah,
I will say though that the last fighting sequence was like very cheesy.
yeah,
I was like, this
yeah.
is very
Which
cheesy.
which I appreciate from like just a comic angle. Like, yeah, try to at this point they weren't trying to make realistic superhero movies. They were trying to make a little bit more larger than life.
Hmm.
Spider-Man was a little bit more based in reality. But still, even then, his spider webs were coming out of his wrists, not any web shooters. It was his
Hmm.
actual wrists, and they comment on that in Spider-Man No Way Home, and then X-Men, same thing. Like, it was obviously otherworldly powers, but it was still, they're set in this house and it's like a school. It's trying to make it a little bit more relatable. Whereas here, I think they really kind of went a little bit more balls to the wall with just the over the top nature, which I actually kind of appreciated.
Hmm.
I just don't think the
Hmm.
dialogue really goes extreme in either direction to really support that like cheesiness. I wish it leaned a little bit more to the cheesiness. Because it tries to be a little too serious at times, especially with Reed and Sue. I keep almost saying Richard and Sue. It's Reed Richards. God,
Reed
two
Richards.
first names. I hate it. Yeah, so maybe we can segue into the next one. But before we do, let's give it a score. I think also this is my second time watching it, so I'm able to I think pick out a little bit more flaws. And I thought,
Okay.
you know what, I'm not gonna go because 5 is my like middle. Like 5 is average, above 5 is great, below 5 is not so great. And I thought, you know what, Fantastic Four, I'm giving it a 4. I'm gonna give it a 4. It feels right.
Wow.
Fantastic Four is a 4, because I think there are elements that I appreciate, but also at the same time, like I don't think this is a great movie by any means. I just think it's got some charming bits and good castings and stuff, but I think a lot of the cons sometimes outweigh the pros, especially with Doctor Doom and Invisible Woman and Reed. Like those three characters, which should be the biggest three characters, are kind of underdeveloped in service of the two characters that are probably more supporting, which is Johnny Storm and Ben Grimm, just totally stealing the show. So
Mm.
and the effects just, I think it just looks so bad. But Kels, tell me, because you probably are much higher. We
Yeah.
both can't speak tonight. Much higher on this film. So please tell us your score and your overall final thoughts.
Well, here's the thing, Dill. I feel like if I saw this movie in like 2005, I would not have been disappointed. I probably would have
Mm,
walked out and been like, wow, that was like the greatest movie I've ever seen.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I don't know. And then I feel like watching it now, like I still really wasn't that disappointed. Like I said, I was
yeah,
really
yeah.
into it. I was enjoying myself.
Great.
So I actually gave this movie a 6 out of 10.
Oh,
The
nice.
fact
Yeah,
that you gave
that's
it a
great.
4, I'm, like, nervous about your other scores because I feel like we only go downhill from here, at least for
Well,
me.
let's go downhill. Why don't we? Let's go to
Okay.
Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, or as credit titled on the poster, because Wikipedia needs to point out that it was actually titled Fantastic numeral 4: Rise of the Silver Surfer. So there are two titles.
Okay.
They on home media they rebranded it, so the 4 is no longer FOUR. It is a 4, number 4. I don't know why they need to make that distinction. Tell us about Fantastic Four 2. Oh yeah, also there's a Silver Surfer. Sorry, Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
I forgot to add the second half because I forgot that was a character in this. Go ahead.
Don't forget about the Silver Surfer. Okay,
I
Fantastic
sorry they
Four.
made it so easy.
Rise of the Silver Surfer came out in 2007, also directed by Tim
Tim Story. Yep.
Story. Alrighty, so here is my synopsis. In the midst of trying to get married, Reed, Sue, Johnny, and Ben. I know the way I worded that, it makes it sound like they're all getting married, but in the midst of Reed and Sue trying to get married,
I mean,
the
technically
fin
they're growing, they're connecting their family. Like Johnny is marrying, and I mean Sue is marrying into the family, so her brother's related. It's a brother-in-law. I mean, yeah, it's a marriage.
sure.
Uh,
The Fantastic Four are faced with another threat, one that could destroy the entire planet in 8 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've both alluded this is a step down for sure. I think everything that was like charming about the first one, they lose a lot of that here. Because
hmm
I think the color is a little bit more void. We kind of get into more of the like, oh, we can use CGI for more stuff. Let's put in a little bit more grays and
Mm.
dark stormies and so I hate all that stuff. But the story itself, it's very interesting because it's like it's all about this wedding, and there is a plot going on with the Silver Surfer, but I feel like most of the movie is just them fucking around with their powers again. But to the point where like that should be something that the origin story is, so that now we can actually like go somewhere with the story. Whereas
Mm.
here it was just kind of like, oh, let's see all the stuff we can do, and let's like make jokes about how like the thing is too big to sit in a airplane seat, or like
Mm.
let's like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It feels like they're just trying to like have a lot of fun gags, and if the whole movie was that, I'd probably like it a lot more. But then they try to like add a plot to it that's supposed to take it in a different direction. But it feels like when the plot actually kicked in, we were already like more than halfway done, and I was like, oh, I'm just not invested. And because again, I'll say it again, Sue and Reed just are not that interesting on their own, and together
Yeah.
it's even cringier. Just not because they're a bad couple, like great, happy for them, but like the dialogue between them is just so cheesy, but not like the
Mm.
fun cheesy, not campy. It's like just like it's like cringy. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
but please tell me your thoughts on this, because you've alluded also that you don't love this as much.
Yeah. This one was definitely a step down for me. Also, I forgot to mention that we did Stanley was featured in
Oh yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
last one. He played a character named Willie. In this one, he is Stanley playing Stanley, and he's trying to be a
Yeah.
guest in their wedding. And
Great
but
cameo.
whoever's not letting him, he's like, I should be on the list. Like, I'm Stan Lee. And he's like, ah, get out of here, old man.
Yeah.
So it was very fun
It's
seeing
sad
him
when
again.
Stan Lee gives the best performance in your movie with only 2 seconds of dialogue. Anyway, carry on.
So, Dill, first and foremost, the first thing I immediately noticed about this movie was, why is Jessica Alba in the worst wig I've ever seen?
Yes. Why is she in the worst wig, and why do they need to give her blue contacts? Does it like ever say in the script that her eyes are blue, or was it just let's have a match the suit because none of the others have blue eyes? It was
Mm-hmm.
very weird. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, design choices already not good.
Very weird stylistic choices for her. We're introduced to this like antagonist force that's kind of zipping through the air. It's making it snow. Now
Yeah.
there's craters in the earth. There's a lot going on. And now Reed the entire time is being an asshat because he's like, no, 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 I'm focusing on our wedding. I'm focusing on our wedding. Just kidding. I'm tinkering in the garage again. Like it's
Yeah.
totally like Tony and Iron Man 3,
Yeah.
where he's like,
Except yeah.
I'm here for you, Pepper, but actually I'm working out in the garage and building more suits and
Except
having
in
PTSD.
Yeah, in 2007, texting was still like relatively new, so like they really
Mm.
made it a point to be like, "Oh, I'm texting," and it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
yeah, no, that's a part that feels super dated, but also like, you're really gonna bring your cell phone to a wedding, like
Mhm.
it just feels far fetched. Yeah, no, Reed is an asshole in this movie, and it's to the point where the first movie it was a little too obvious that she should be with Reed and not Victor. Here it's
Mhm.
all too obvious that she should not be with Reed because Reed sucks. Reed
Yeah.
is doing everything in his power to be the worst husband, fiance, whatever, going
Yeah.
against everything Sue possibly wants, everything that Ben recommends he doesn't do, Johnny recommends he doesn't do. Man, like Reed is the worst in this movie, and not the acting, not the performance, but the character is just the worst.
Yeah. And he's like, no, I don't have time to work on your project, military. I have a wedding to do. And you're like, yeah, like, oh my God, like he's picking her over science. This is
Hmm.
amazing. And he's fucking lying. And I was like, well, this
Right.
just makes him unlikable. And like in the first movie, like you tried so hard for me to like this character. And I was like, okay, fine. I like him. And now everything that you made me like about him, you just tossed out the window in the first 10 minutes of this second film. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, well, now I really don't care if they're together anymore or
I will
anything.
say the romance I do like to see. I like to see the Thing get his gal, Kerry Washington, in an
That's
early
another
role
thing
for
we
her.
didn't bring up in the first one.
Yeah,
Kerry Washington playing a blind woman who's in love with the Thing.
I didn't even get that she was blind. She's blind. See, that
She's
just went over my
blind.
head. Oh, okay.
No,
So
she like
basic.
that's yeah.
I thought that was like a really sweet moment. I was like, oh, so she loved it. So she only loves him because she can't see him. And she's like,
Yes.
see, I hate it even more now. I'll keep it at
I'm
a
sorry
core,
to
but
burst your bubble, Dale,
I
but
didn't
they
even
have
realize
the
she was
whole bit
blind.
in the
Wow.
first movie. He goes to get a drink at the bar, and she's like, "Oh, like put it on my tab." And then you like see her, like she gets her like stick out, and he's like, "Oh, like if you could see me, like you probably, wouldn't be
Uh,
so nice to me or something." And
yeah,
she's like, "Oh, then like let me like touch you, like whatever." And she's
yeah.
like, being different isn't all that bad. And he's like, "Trust me, like it's not one of those times."
Mm,
And then, I like how he's finding
yeah.
his happiness though, compared to what, the woman who had left him,
Yeah, I
I
think
was
it's
like,
because I think it's because I watch all these movies very relatively back to back to back that I just that detail just slipped over my head, and
sure.
because she doesn't really move or act like a blind person, she just says it. Like she's very, it always seems like she's responding, and I obviously I've not been around a ton of blind people, but like I feel like she makes really good eye contact and like really is really facially communicative, and
Hmm.
and moves around pretty well that I just didn't realize she was blind. That is my fault. Kids, if you're going to take bathroom breaks during the movies, pause them, because then you miss important details like that. But that also makes me angry because it's like, oh, so if she could see him, would she hate him still? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But it certainly helps that she doesn't have to look at him. And is that to say that the only people the Thing could get with are people that can't see what he looks like? I mean,
Yeah.
come on, that's not a good message to spread. But
I
um,
will say though, Dill, while we're on the topic of conversation of this relationship, like I do appreciate the fact that like, I don't know, this film feels kind of mature. And like even the
mm,
first one, like it felt like it was made for an older audience, like perhaps an audience that's kind of like, 14 and older
mm-hmm,
instead of like, 10 and older, where we kind of
mm-hmm,
feel in some of the MCU movies.
yeah,
But Because at some point, Johnny does ask, he's like, so how do you guys, like,
Yeah.
and the thing's like, hey, that's none of your business. And he's like,
But
I don't know.
he gets like really angry about it. And if it was me, I would be like, that's a good question. I'm not gonna really tell you. It's not really your business. But like he gets so pissed off about it. I'm like, why
Yeah.
can he not? Like, is that why? Or but also they don't explain it.
Oh,
It's
you
just
think
he
there's
just
like
gets
a hidden meaning behind it? Like,
well, I don't know. It's
we
just he gets
can't.
so angry and doesn't really explain why he's so angry. He just like
Like,
he gets so
it's a
pissed off about
sore
that one thing.
subject.
Yeah, he's like, "Argh!" I'm like, oh my god, like he just asked you a question, and
Yeah.
obviously he said it in a joking manner, but it's like he was curious, as I'm sure a lot of people were, if their minds were wandering enough during this film, they probably thought once or
Yeah.
twice, how does the thing fuck? I don't know, I didn't question it, but some people do. I mean, I'm sure
That's what
people
I love
question it with the
about
Hulk
Johnny.
too. Yeah, like
No,
if him and Natasha were doing it, and Hulk and Bruce got a little angry, like what happens? Especially, never
I,
mind, never. I'm not gonna
I,
go there.
can
I
we?
almost
We're
I
just
almost
let's
got
just
I almost
not.
got into Ant-Man up Thanos butthole territory, and it would have gotten really nasty really fast. So I'm not gonna talk about it.
Please. The imagery, and like the
What if
feeling in
he
my chest.
what if he hulks out
No,
while he's
no, no, no,
doing the
Dill. We're
deed?
not going there. We're not going there.
That's gonna need some stitches.
I'm gonna
Anyway,
stop you there.
it's late. Again, this movie, it just makes me laugh because it's like the first one, it wasn't that great, but it was entertaining. But this one, I'm just like, ugh. Anyway, um, want to talk about
But
the
that's what
Silver
I
Surfer because he's in it.
Yeah, let's talk about the Silver Surfer, because I will say, I think the one positive, I actually have like a few positives to say about the
Okay, okay,
Silver Surfer, but I will say that his kind of like reveal when he flies through the Chrysler building and he like comes out, I thought that was kind of cool. I was like,
yeah.
damn, that was kind of
It's a cool,
sick.
it's a cool design. But if you're gonna name
Yeah.
your titular character the Silver Surfer, I mean, obviously Fantastic Four is also a titular character group, but like
Yeah.
the rise of the Silver Surfer, and I feel like he's just very much like a secondary plot point.
Mm,
Like he's the inciting
sure.
action for a lot of it, but like the plot really isn't about him as much as it is just like the group. I don't know. I just don't think his character is as well thought out or fleshed out as a character in the name of the movie should be. Like Captain America: The Winter Soldier, it's a big Bucky movie,
Hmm.
Thor Ragnarok, it is about Ragnarok, the end of the war. Like they really deliver on their premise. Multiverse of Madness, it is that. This, I'm like, Rise of the Silver Surfer, I was like, yeah, he has like what, 3 lines of dialogue? I was like, he just floats around a little bit, comes and goes, barely, as soon as you forget he's there, he comes back, and then you forget again, and then he's back. Um, yeah,
If anything, it's more about the surfboard than it is about him.
right.
Like, they
No,
don't even need the guy, they just need the
no.
board.
No, which by the way, the guy Lawrence Fishburne from Ant-Man and the Wasp provides
Yes.
the voice, and the actor in this suit is Doug Jones, who has done a bunch of Guillermo del Toro movies. He's the one in Pan's
Mm,
Labyrinth with the eyes on his hands. He's also the Fish
mm.
Man in Shape of Water.
I knew
Another,
you were gonna say he was the fish man. I was like, he's gonna be
yeah,
the fish man, isn't he?
yeah. Well,
As soon as
and
you
the
said Guillermo del Toro.
well, as soon as we were talking about the thing, I thought of the Fish Man. With the um, and then he was also for most people our age, he was the zombie in Hocus Pocus, the little Billy, um,
Oh,
who
okay.
actually gets to do more than just be a creature. He gets to have an actual arc in that. But yeah, Doug Jones is a really good like physical performer. He's good in a pinch for roles like these that are very much about the aesthetic and the style and the body formations and the physicality and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was cool to see them in it for the seconds they were. Um, just not a fan of this character. I just don't think it's utilized well.
So Dill, at one point, he flies up to space and is like, "I'm doing the duty you sent me to do." And I literally wrote down what in the Arshim is going on, because this is exactly what like the Eternals was, where they would just like
Right.
float up into another dimension, and Arshim would be like, "Yes, you are doing the job I sent you to do." And I didn't fully understand who this guy's working for. He keeps warning us time and time again. He's like, he's coming. I can't stop it." And
Galactus, yeah.
and and Sue Storm is just like, we all have a choice, like you don't have to be the bad guy. And then like, eventually he, brings Sue back to life, whatever. And I was like, I literally wrote down, I was like, yo, is Sue dead? Like this kind of sucks. And
because you know they're gonna bring her back too. It's just one of those things
yeah.
where like of all the four to die, she's probably the most crucial because like they're not just gonna end on them not getting married. Like if they killed Johnny or
Mm,
Ben, it would have been a little more suspenseful for me. But the fact that they killed Sue, I was like,
yeah.
she's gotta be alive again because neither of us had seen this one, so I was like, I was waiting to see, but I was pretty sure she'd be alive. Um, yeah.
So, Dill, we have to talk about, since we get introduced to the Silver Surfer and Johnny, goes after him, whatever. And now all of a sudden, every
Ah,
time he
yes.
touches someone else, they transfer powers and they're all flopping powers at
I
some point.
I kid you not. Before I watched this, I thought, wouldn't it just be fun if there was a movie where like they just switch powers? Like, wouldn't that be funny if like an Avengers movie, if like Black Widow all of a sudden had the Spider-Man powers and Spider-Man, but then I was like, oh, but they're all like a lot of them aren't like actual powered beings. Like Iron Man is a guy in a suit, and Spider Man
Mm,
has the web slingers. Like obviously he was bit by the spider, but I was like, this would be fun if like Jessica Alba played the Thing, or like Michael Chiklis was the Invisible Man, or something. Like I was like, that'd be fun, a
hmm
little like role swap, if you will, like a midnight movie. Like let's have fun with this thing, and then it
hmm
happened, and I was like, oh, that's such a good idea, and then it lasts for like
Yeah.
a minute, and I'm like, oh, I wish the whole movie was that like just them like swapping it because they bring it
Wow.
back at the end with like Chris
Yeah.
Evans, but like I wish it was just like this fun like if I were to make a movie like this and notice that the story wasn't that interesting, I'd be like, why not just make like a fun like slapstick comedy about these superheroes who keep switching bodies and need to figure out their
Mm,
powers, and then give them like some sort of action mission to do, like make a shorter movie. Yeah, like that's what you can have fun with a group like this with a stretchy guy and
sure.
invisible girl. And I liked how they did that for the minute they did it. I was like, that's a fun idea where like you get to see Michael Chiklis also. There he probably said in his contract, he was like, I want them to see my face for a shot of
Mm,
this. Um
sure.
like I like that. That was a fun scene. I actually enjoyed that.
I will say, when it first started happening, like when Sue first got on fire and
Yeah.
she's just floating up and
It is
screaming
stupid.
her head off. Jessica Alba, she's screaming at the top of her lungs about how the fact that she's on fire. Granted, I would probably be screaming as well,
Yeah.
but I was like, this is kind of ridiculous. And you kept, and it's funny that you were like, oh, like I wish it went on longer. I wish it was kind of like the rest of the movie. I thought it went on too long. I was like, all right, we have to like move past this. Like
Maybe
you're
not
on
the
fire.
actual
It's fine.
yeah, maybe not the actual scene when should have gone on longer, but that
Yeah.
premise should have been explored further. Like I wish they'd played around a little bit more with the body swap stuff, not like have Sue screaming for 2 hours like that. I don't need, but like make it just yeah, have fun with all these powers, and then maybe bring in like some X-Men powers or something where like Chris Evans gets some Wolverine claws. He's like, what's going on here? Like make some
Mm,
fun IP crossovers or something. Like
yeah.
something fun like that would have been nice. Like even just make a short film of that, just like a 10-minute, Fantastic Four trying to get their powers sorted out and they're all swapping. I don't know. I think that'd be fun. Um, I do have to say though,
Okay.
there's one more talking point I have, and that is, and oh, we should probably talk about Doctor Doom too because he's also in this for some reason. But because they shipped him away and it could have been easy as that, just ship him away. But of
Mm-hmm.
course, the post credits had to have him open his eyes, and now it's like, okay, I gotta get Doctor Doom in here. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a sec. But I gotta say, I don't know if they were fooling around or if they were just like, really good friends or really close or just really good actors, but didn't realize what parts they were playing. But Jessica Alba and Chris Evans have way too much sexual chemistry for siblings. Way too much to the point where there's a moment when Sue survives at the end, and Johnny like walks up to her and like gives her a hug. That like I was convinced they were gonna make out. I was like they were so close, and I was like, are they going there? Like, okay. No, it was
Is this the
oddly
turn this
uncomfortable.
movie's
I'm
taking?
gonna tell you right now, if you rewatch this and watch for the two of them in their scenes together, it gets oddly uh uncomfortable. To the point where you're like, hmm. Which they're both very attractive people. They could very well have been doing whatever they were doing, but it shouldn't translate to the set, especially because Reed is such a fucking cock in this movie. It was so nice to see that like maybe I would have preferred the incest to the horrible relationship of Reed and Sue Storm Richards, whatever their last name is.
Not a
Anyway,
dick. Not a dick. A cock.
no, like the worst. Yeah, no. Yeah,
Oh
that
my
did you
god.
pick up on that at all?
Dill,
No?
Dill, I'll be honest. I totally did. I
Yeah.
totally. It was
Well,
the
because
it
also
was
you
the
were feeling
scene.
your own way about Chris Evans, so like then to see Sue, I
So
mean,
maybe I
how,
was
yeah,
getting a little jealous. I don't know,
yeah, maybe it's
but
like one of those things where like it just any women in his presence just feel that gravitas, that gravity. But no, it's. I'm glad you picked up on it because I was
no,
oddly
I
uncomfortable.
did. No, it was during the scene where, it way in the beginning where she comes in her wedding dress and
That
he's getting
too.
ready to walk her down the aisle. I dead ass thought they were
He
gonna
looked her up and
kiss.
down. He looked her up
I
and
was like,
down.
they're gonna kiss.
He was like, "Oh yeah, sis," and it was like, "Ugh, get it,
he
stop it."
was he was like, "You look beautiful," and then he like got really close to her, like scanned her face, like looked her up and down, and was like, "Dad would be proud." And I was like, I think they're gonna kiss. I was that
I'm
nervous.
glad you picked up on that too, because that was another moment. But the last one is the one that was in my brain. But yeah, no, it happens twice, and it probably happens more often than we think. Like if we were to actually
Yeah.
like go and watch frame by frame, there's probably moments. I mean, like, I don't know if that was Chris
Before
Evans checking out Jessica Alba, or if that was an intentional choice, or if the director was like, let's fuck with the audience. I don't know. Yeah,
I don't
but
know, man. I
yeah,
don't
I don't
know.
know.
Before we move on to Victor, real quick, I did want to
Oh, yeah.
say while we were talking about the shifting of powers, at some point when Chris Evans like turns into the Thing and the Thing gets his powers, I'm sorry, but like Chris Evans, like with the Thing stuff on, I'm like, why did he look like Tom Brady? He looked like Tom Brady.
I thought you were gonna go like a different route and say like he looked good, but like I'm glad you brought
No,
no. I was like, so
no, he
Kelsey, are
looked like
you?
no, he looked like a big meathead with like a big ass head that's been morphed from years of playing football and like the helmet, and it was just not a good look. I
Yeah,
was like,
no,
he looks
no,
like Tom Brady.
yeah,
And then also
and
obviously as a Giants fan, so I'm like, fuck
yeah.
Tom Brady.
Yeah, sorry if you're watching this and you love Tom Brady. We do not. We still
Mm-mm.
support you watching this show, but if you don't support us after that, I'm sorry. But yeah, Victor Von Doom, he's in it, and I really don't think he needs to be at all. He doesn't.
Oh my
He
god,
really
it
does
was
not. You could have any other character
boo
be the one who wants to
corny.
get his hand on the skateboard too, but like, also it's like, or surfboard, wherever it is. But like,
Hmm.
they almost try to make him good for a little while, and he's like working with the team, but then immediately he's not. It was too much of a rehash of the first one when you already have an underdeveloped, boring villain. To just bring him back to do the same exact shit again, it just
Hmm.
it did not work for me at all.
No,
No.
not at all.
Yeah.
I was like, I literally wrote down, I was like, Victor's the big baddie again. He sucks.
Yeah,
And like
he
not in
does.
like not in like a, oh my god, he's so good at being a villain. I hate him. No, I
Mhm.
just hate him because he
Yeah,
sucks.
it's
Just all
not like
around.
Umbridge in Order of Phoenix, where I'm like, I hate that movie because I hate her, but she's doing so
Mhm.
well at making me hate her.
Mhm.
It just
Yeah.
He's just not good. Not the actor, but I mean, maybe the actor's not good. I don't know. I don't know him. So I don't care to say
I don't
if
know.
I say this or not, but I don't think the performance is that great. Yeah, no,
Sure.
not a fan of this movie. I'm gonna cut that four in half and give it a two here. I'm not gonna go all the way down to one. I'll save that for later. But or not. Maybe I'll give it a 1-0 to the next one, a big old 10. But this one gives I give it 2-4, so a whole star out of 5. What would you give this?
I gave this one a fantastic 4 out of 10.
Okay, so you
And
did what I
only
did for the first one.
because
Yeah,
I started with a 3 and then I just thought about Chris Evans again and I was like, yeah, I'll give it a 4.
yeah, great. Speaking of four, let's talk about Fan Four Stick, aka
Oh,
Fantastic
but
Four.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
real quick. They had a
yes.
weird culture appropriated wedding at the end with Jessica
Oh
Alba in like
yeah,
a
let's talk
kimono
about
in
that.
like
What
in
was that?
Japan. I don't know. How did
Because
they
at
end
first
up
he
in
was like,
Japan?
yeah, at first she was like, let's have like a big public wedding, and he's like, I have a different thing in mind. I thought they were gonna like go to the courthouse or like have it between the
Mhm.
four of them, and no, it is
Yeah.
still a full wedding. It's just in some village in Japan, and they're being completely cultural appropriation and all that jazz, and it's awkward. And he still gets a text, and now the character growth isn't that he's learned not to text at his wedding; it's that she now allows him to, and she's the one who says, "Let's skip to the end because my man knows right." And we got to conform to my man because guess what? If someone pulls out a cell phone at my wedding, oh, good for him. let's go do what he needs to do. It's not my wedding or anything. Oh, and let me throw the bouquet and have my brother light it on fire. A moment
Yeah.
everyone looks forward to at their wedding day. Throwing the bouquet and let's ruin that fucking moment too. This movie is fucking shite. All
And
right.
then also Johnny the entire time is trying to hit on like that military girl, and the entire time
Random
she's
girl.
like, you need to be a better person. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll work on me. I'll work on me, you know? And right at the end, she's about to catch it. He finally got his dream girl, and he's like, no, not ready for commitment. Have to burn this bouquet. And I'm
Yeah,
like, Johnny, what happened to your character development?
there was
Out
no
the window.
that character was dumb too. I was like, they're just forcing everything on us. Anyway,
She didn't
we
even
gotta
have a
move on.
name. Like, what even was
Yeah,
her name? Who knows?
girl. We gotta move on. That wasn't me saying girl. We gotta move on. That was me responding to your question and answering. Her name is girl, and now we've got to move on to
I got it.
Fantastic Four 2015. I have some great stories about this. Before I get into the summary, and then I'll talk
Okay.
about my personal experience watching this for the first time.
Okay, so Fantastic Four came out in 2015, as we mentioned a few times, but I need to say it again. It was directed by Josh Trank.
Yep, you got it. Yeah,
Cool. And then also IMDb credits someone else. They credit Stephen E. Rifkin
yeah.
um, as the
Um,
director as well, so I didn't know.
yeah, this is probably a good time to just talk about this out the gate. This movie had the most crazy pre-production process I've ever seen for a movie. I'm not going to go through all of it because the Wikipedia page is too long to read, but like there were
Okay.
writers, there were co-writers, there were writers who were hiding pages from other writers and writers getting mad that they weren't using this. There were disagreements. One writer got fired, another writer said this is the script I want to use, and they hired more writers to come in and rewrite the whole thing to where they only used a few of the other writers' pages. And then the other writer stormed off and said, this is a mess. Went on Twitter. Josh Trank went on Twitter and basically said, this movie's shit because they changed everything I wanted to do. I wanted to make it more realistic. They wanted a superhero movie and all this jazz and CGI and shit that I didn't want. They
Mm,
added it. It was a terrible experience. They brought in more people, more rewrites, more things. Anyway, it was a big mess. So if you have the time to go and look at just all the writing and the filming and all that stuff that went into this, it was a crazy hectic thing. And it was in the midst of Disney trying to buy Fox, so there were already talks of like,
mm,
well, is this going to tie into X-Men? Is this going to be its own thing? Are we going to let it go? Because this was just a few years before like Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix and that started to unravel. So like, yeah, really rough pre-production to the point where like the director has said that like he really wishes there could be a director's cut, but the producers and the actual studio has so much of that material that he couldn't even give you a director's cut because the production just kind of took his stuff and made it, cut a lot of it and just made their own shit and
mm,
filmed so many things, changed the whole ending. And so the director is very overtly spoken about how he's disappointed in um how the film went, even so publicly that he went on Twitter the day before the movie came out. This is actually what I'm going to read. Went on the day before the movie came out on Twitter and said, a year ago I had a fantastic version of this, fantastic, and it would have received great reviews. You'll probably never see it. That's reality though, the day before it came out. So that is why there's so many people credited for
wow.
writing and directing this movie. Kate Mara has said her experience on the film was horrible. This is like a shit show of production, and we'll talk about whether or not we think it's actually a shit show, because it might be the best film of all time, but the production of it was a
In
shit
what universe?
in my universe, Kelsey.
Okay,
Casablanca,
Dill.
who? No, but yeah, no, it was a shit show of a production. So before you even get into the plot, I just wanted to preface that getting it to the screen was a miracle on its own. To where
Mm.
also just the money they spent on this and wasted on this and lost on this is also very funny. So tell us about the plot now that I got that out of the way.
Wow, okay. All right. So after going on a rogue mission to another dimension, four scientists have to find a cure to their mutations and stop the fifth one from destroying their reality.
Yes, that is right. So basically, the same old premise as we've seen with all these, which is fine. It was a reboot. They wanted to reboot it, or at least some people wanted to reboot it. Some wanted to make their own movie. I don't know who got in the way. I don't know what movie we're seeing, but um, I have a funny story. So
Go ahead, Dill.
oh, I for my grandparents' 50th anniversary, they said let's do a family vacation and like take everyone to like a really nice place because all the kids were about to go to college in the next few years. I think I just graduated junior year of high school, so I was going into my senior year. So they knew it'd be harder to get the whole family together. Let's do a trip to Hawaii. We all went to Hawaii. We get to Hawaii the same week in August 7th is the day this came out. So it was that week. Went to Hawaii in August, and we were like, hey, let's let's enjoy Hawaii. And I was like, yeah, I'll see Fantastic Four when I get home. And I saw it was getting shit reviews, so I was like, okay, maybe I don't want to see this. But then we went to Hawaii. We get there and it is like 4 a.m. But for us, it feels like 7 p.m. Because what happens is we got there at like 5 p.m. and we were so jet lagged and tired that we went to bed and woke up at like 3 or 4 a.m. and we were like, shit, we're hungry. We want breakfast. What's open? The only place open was a Denny's. So we went to Denny's and we're like, okay, I'd never been to a Denny's. I was like, this is fun. Denny's in Hawaii. First Hawaiian meal, good old big old breakfast. I think they're called the Big Breakfast or whatever they're called, the Grand Slam or whatever. I don't know what it's called. I don't want to promote them, but if you want to sponsor us, Denny's, please do. So we're sitting in this Denny's eating, and I'm like, okay, well, this is the only food we can have. And on the menu, there's a special Fantastic Four item, and it's like some weird like waffle thing, or I don't know what it is. But I saw it, I was like, wow, that's cool. They're doing promotions, and like, oh, I get a free movie ticket. Looked, there were no movie theaters in the area. I was like, oh, okay, well, never mind. I'm not gonna waste 2 hours of my Hawaiian vacation going to see a movie that's supposedly bad just because Denny's gave me a free ticket to it on the menu. So I went back to the hotel room, still early as shit. There's nothing open. I can't go back to sleep. Everyone's like, let's get a few more hours of sleep and hopefully wake up at like 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning like normal people and try to have a good day. I couldn't do that. So I pulled up my phone. I went on to an illegal movie site and I watched Fantastic Four on my phone because Denny's put me in the mood. I was like, well, I might as well watch it. If I'm not going to wait a week to go see it, if it really is that bad, I'll just watch it on my phone right now. And I was a kid. I didn't care about like integrity of seeing movies, for money. I was like, you know what? This director's pissed off about it anyway. He tweeted it. So like, I'm just going to hate watch this on my phone. And I was watching it, and the version that was uploaded was not like HD or anything. It was a pretty crappy version of it. I was watching it, and I was like, okay. And then the end comes. I'm like, wait a sec. They haven't even had any action sequences. I think there's a lot of this cut out. I think there's a lot of movie cut out. And then I looked at the runtime. I was like, wait, no. This is the runtime of the movie. Wait, it's about to end in 10 minutes, and they still haven't had an action sequence. And I was like, wait, is this the whole movie? Then it ended, and I was like, and then it was time to wake up and go and do Hawaiian things. But that is my story because I think that encompasses all my feelings toward this movie. Is that I hate watched it illegally on my phone after going to a Denny's and eating a really bad waffle inspired by this movie. So in Hawaii.
Wow.
And I actually had my first like breakup ever in my life like a few days before. So it was just a really shit time. So that's
Wow.
my story about Fantastic Four. What a dark place. I will not watch this movie any other way but my phone, by the way. I watched this movie for this podcast on my phone because I can't do it any other way. I watched it on Disney Plus, so it was nicer quality, but I can't do it any other way. Anyway, Kelsey, give me your thoughts now that I've rambled. But that was my story.
Well, first and foremost, still, I want to talk about the cast because we have new cast members playing these
Let's
roles.
actually talk
So,
about the movie, yeah.
first and foremost, we have Miles Teller as Reed Richards. We have Jamie Bell. Yes,
yep.
Jamie Bell as Ben Grimm's, and we have Kate Mara, as you said, as Sue Storm, and we have Michael B. Jordan as Johnny Storm. And obviously, we know Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger from Black Panther. We also might know Kate Mara from Iron Man 2. She plays a lawyer giving Tony a subpoenaed from... What is going on with my hair right now? I'm so sorry. I have to fix it. It was just distracting me so hard. Yeah, so she's in Iron Man 2. She gives him a subpoena that, brings him to the Capitol where he, gets into that drama with the senator or whatever. And also, Jamie Bell has kind of like an indirect connection to the MCU because he is in Snowpiercer with Chris Evans, a movie we've talked about on this podcast.
That's right.
He
I also
plays
want to bring
Edgar.
Yeah, Dr. Harvey Allen in this was played by Tim Blake Nelson, who was also in The Incredible Hulk a long time ago. Incredible Hulk.
There we go.
This is another one as well. Yeah, a lot of good actors in this, which is even more surprising given the final product. But yeah, a lot of great actors. Yeah.
So, right off the bat, Dill, I immediately picked up on a different tone that this movie was taking on, like compared to the other two. Like the other two were very superhero, classic comic book, all that jazz. This
Color.
one, color. Yeah,
They
filled with
wanted to
color.
have a color other than gray in it. Yeah.
This one, just like everyone's angsty, man. Like,
Yeah.
first of all, we start off with like a flashback of, Reed and Ben as children. And like we kind of see like a look into their friendship, how they started like inventing things together. They were, entering the science fair together. No one was really taking them seriously. And I kind of appreciated like getting just like a hint of
Mhm.
backstory. And now all of a sudden, like Reed Richards is getting recruited by this Baxter Foundation, which is like
Mhm.
a school slash institution, whatever. I'm not
Research
really sure what
institute.
it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. With Sue Storm, who's another student there. So immediately they're taking on a different tone where they're trying to just make all these characters like angsty young adults.
Yeah.
So they're not in their adulthood. It's not like
What?
they're paying mortgages or anything. Like
Yeah.
they're, seniors in high school going on to college.
Which is an interesting premise. Like we've seen it with X Men,
Mhm.
kind of like kind of how they're out of school. They're kind of coming of age with these roles. That I don't mind the actual premise of that. Yeah.
Sure. Um I really yeah. And then like I literally wrote down I really don't know what they're working towards. But then I kind of pieced it together that they're trying to get to this other dimension, and then at some point Kate Mara says like, "Oh, let's bring him home." And then a monkey's on the screen and I was like, "Oh, were they trying to rescue a monkey?" This is what I connected in my head. I was like half watching this movie, half doing other things I needed to do. So it's probably more my
Ah,
fault than the
okay.
movies that I really don't
Well,
know what's going on.
you at least watched it on a place you could actually see it rather than on your phone in a Hawaiian hotel room.
Yeah, I
Um,
definitely didn't watch a bootleg version for sure.
um, yeah, no, yeah. The NASA like wants them to venture into this parallel dimension. They call it Planet Zero, and then
Mhm.
that's where all the stuff explodes and they get powers. I mean, it's a very
Yeah.
basic premise, drawn out a little bit, and of course covered in mud because that's what the aesthetic of this film is. To
Yeah.
match the moodiness, it's like, and let's stick them in mud as well. Um,
Now I'm
yeah.
surprised still, but also kind of not at all that they went with using Victor Von Doom again as like the main antagonist who we don't see until there's only 20 minutes left of the film. Cuz I feel like with a reboot that's just like an opportunity to bring in a different villain, like a new,
Yeah.
same characters, kind of
Mhm.
same origin story, but like, a different threat to face
Right.
because we had already
Yeah.
seen this threat before,
Yeah,
you know what I
I
mean?
think it's kind of like one of those things where it's like you're always gonna see some version of the Joker in a Batman movie because
Okay.
because that's like the quintessential Batman villain, even though there are so many Batman villains. Whereas the Fantastic Four, they don't even have a bunch. It's like Victor Von Doom is their like big villain. So like I get that, but also
Mm,
like I agree with you. Like if you're not gonna, I think the difference is also like if you're gonna reboot it and bring this villain in, do something really interesting and unique with it. Maybe make it a Victor Von Doom movie first and a Fantastic Four movie second, or something else. Take the character in a different direction rather than just like, oh, I have powers, I want to kill shit, and I want to control everything. Like it's the most generic
mhm,
villain ever, and we've seen him now in 3 films serving the same exact premise. They've never gotten Doctor
mhm.
Doom right for the screen because he's a really good character in the comics, and that's a shame. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and then they all kind of get their powers in like a lame way because first of
Yeah.
all, Sue isn't even there. Like she doesn't
Right.
even go on the mission with them. So
Yeah.
the entire time I'm thinking I'm like, okay, well this is how they're going to get their powers by going to
Mm.
this dimension together. But like how's Sue going to get hers? And then I was like, okay, well I guess she's there for the blast when they re-enter, their reality. But like
Mhm.
it was just so it was just kind of corny how like they made like, oh, Ben is getting hit by a bunch of rocks and Johnny gets
Right.
like a fire blast in his face, and I was like, okay, well, what's gonna make Reed stretchy? Is he gonna be like bending for something while the blast happens? And then they didn't explain that really. Like
No.
all of a sudden he's
Well,
just like on
yeah.
the operating table with his limbs stretched out, and
Yeah,
I was
I
like,
also
what
think
happened?
it's also funny because they probably did so many reshoots that Kate Mara probably just wasn't in this. It wasn't available that week, so they're like, she'll come in later. I really do think that's what a lot
Yeah,
of this movie is like,
maybe.
oh well, we can't get Doctor Doom in the studio for another few months. All right, well let's just tack his stuff on at the end of the filming process and hope he can get it. Like it really feels
Wild.
like that, disjointed by the way characters come and go and the way they're given certain plot lines and the way time jumps and the way the aesthetics are used and the different locations. It feels very uh, mismatched, jumbled up. It
Yeah.
feels like a disastrous, you know, pre-production. It just feels
Yes.
like it was doomed haha, from the start, you know?
So what I loved about the first movie deal was that they spent a good amount of time, trying to figure out their power. It's not too long of a time, but there
Exploring them,
was
yeah.
that sequence of like them starting from square one to getting into a
Mhm.
decent place where they could, at
Yeah,
least hold their own in a fight. And
yeah.
with this movie, it was like we all saw them on operating tables, not like barely even alive, to then cutting to Johnny being able to throw fire blasts and Kate Mara being able to like hover herself in the air. And I was literally like, what? I was like, okay, wait, what time is it even in now in this film? And I was 45 minutes in, and they
Yeah.
had just started using their powers, and I was like, okay. And now Reed's not even there. They're like, yeah, Reed
No.
left because like
He's
he
a
couldn't take
fugitive,
it.
yeah. Yeah.
And like and Ben, I was so excited to see Ben because I was so excited to see Edgar because we all know that Edgar was my favorite part of Snowpiercer, and
Yes,
also
yes.
Jamie Bell kind of looks like Tom Holland, and I think that's another reason why I like him. And I was like, I was asking for Ben the entire time, and I just didn't get enough of Ben.
No.
And
And I think the rock design is kinda dumb. Like, again, it's CGI,
yeah,
not practical.
yeah,
It doesn't feel like a comic book, and I'm okay with kinda distancing from that if you're gonna really make it look so fresh and unique and different and tell a really compelling story. The problem is it's the same story, just they're
hmm
trying to make it aesthetically different, and I think that's where they lose it. It's like, if you're gonna make a story that's more based in reality, make the story more realistic or do something different with the story. You're taking the same template, you're just saying it's more serious because you're taking the color out of it, making everything feel a lot moodier and more tonally serious. That's not
hmm
changing and making this more realistic. That's just
yeah,
setting it to a totally different, filter. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And a
no,
bland
yeah,
one.
for sure.
Yeah.
And then we finally get, so I'm like, all right, so like who's the villain now? And now they're kind of fighting about whether or not they're going to get a cure to like cure themselves. And Kate Mara is like, well, I'm not going to be anyone's tool. I'm like, well, then girl, why are you in the training facility learning how to do force fields? I would just be
Yeah.
sitting around twiddling my thumbs if I was just
Yeah.
waiting around for a cure. I'm like, why are you
It's
why are you
yeah.
enhancing your power? I don't get it.
Yeah. It's like they're
And
trying to give her like something like powerful to fight for or whatever. And be like this powerful feminist female character, but also like actual movie is giving her zero material to work with to where like she
mhm,
once again feels like the girl. And I
yeah.
think in 2005 that's a shame, but that's kind of predicted. 2015, there's no excuse. There's no excuse
Mhm.
to just set her aside. Like you said, have the other three go and oh, where's Sue? It doesn't matter. Like they make her, she's much more the afterthought in this one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a shame. Yeah.
And I will say, Dill, in this one, Sue Storm is definitely my weak link. And
Yeah.
I just think it was because
And
I
again, not her
just
fault.
don't,
Yeah.
I, well, I
Oh,
don't know.
okay.
I just don't think like Kate Mara was right in this movie
Roll.
for this
Yeah.
role.
Okay. Yeah.
Because like I just think that I don't think that she's a bad actor. I think that
No,
her
no.
style of acting is just not what this movie needed.
That's
Like
fair.
she's
Yeah.
very good at doing like very subtle realistic things, almost like
Yeah.
what, people like to say about Brie Larson is that like she's
Hmm.
very just like
Yeah.
she's very into realism, and
Uh-huh.
it's never, you know, grandiose or anything. I don't want to say like schmacky or
Yeah.
something negative, but like it's just not the style that I feel like this movie needed. Because
That's
like
fair. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
shame because like with everything else going around her, her tonally just doesn't match, and it
Hmm.
feels like she's just sucking the life out of every
Yeah.
scene that she's
Yeah.
in. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is so disappointing because I know you're not a bad actor.
Yeah.
I
And the
know
writing
you've
does aid
done
that
good
though
stuff.
too. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes, and I completely fault the writing for sure
Yeah.
because I just don't think that a group of men know
Yeah.
how to write
I,
a female character.
I
That's
do
just
think
the
Miles Teller also kind
truth
of
of it all.
fits fits that bill a little bit too, just kind of sucking
Sure.
the life out of some stuff. Like I think Michael B. Jordan is naturally charismatic in everything he does. Jamie
Mhm.
Bell, it's just easy for Ben to be the most relatable and sympathizable. Like I
Mhm.
don't even know if that's a word, sympathizable. It's late, whatever. Put it in my
I
dictionary.
I'm following what you're saying, so it doesn't
But like,
matter.
yeah, Ben is the one that we're gonna like feel for. Aw, and Michael B. Jordan as an actor, kind of charismatic. The other two, again, kind of like the other movies. Like it really lands on the writing and the performances to make those characters great or not. And I love Miles Teller too. I love Whiplash. I've seen Top Gun Maverick now 3 times, and it's only been out for a week because he's
Wow.
he's really great in it. He's really great in it. Yeah, it's one of the best films I've seen. So yeah,
Wow.
at least yeah, this decade. But yeah, no, like he is a good actor, and this makes it even more infuriating because we're not getting great performances from him or Kate Mara or Toby Kebbell or any of these people to the extent of what we know they're capable of, for sure.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
I will say though, I thought that this movie did a better job of showcasing Reed and his powers.
Okay.
Like they had
Yes.
him do a sequence where he was kind of like on the run from the military trying to find him in the woods, and then he even had like a good battle moment between him and Victor at the end. Like I just thought that and especially because he had the whole kind of like flashback in the beginning and him at the science fair, I was like, this guy feels, like a sciencey nerd. Like I'm
Hmm.
vibing with this character. And then he gets these powers that, he kind of has to figure out himself because the first thing he wants to do is go save his friend, go help his friend. He's like, oh my God, I have to get to Ben. So he
Yeah.
like forces his limbs back to normal. I thought like that was all very cool. Like that was
Yeah.
working for me. And I think that this movie was the best at showcasing Reed, who's supposed to be Mr. Fantastic, like literally the guy. And I
Yeah.
feel like in all three of these movies, even though this one was the best version of it, it still wasn't done well. You know what
Right.
I mean? And I'm
No.
like,
Yeah, I
he's
agree.
the guy. And so then we get to an hour and 20 minutes in the film, and the Fantastic Four, the name of the movie, they haven't even interacted yet. We don't know what they fight like together. They haven't been practicing together. They haven't been communicating. They're just raw dogging it into battle. They're just going in blind. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and now like Victor's back, and I will say
The
the
first
coolest.
action sequence too. The first like action sequence doesn't
Yes.
even happen until way into it.
Yes, it's literally the first and last action sequence in the movie. That's
Yeah.
that's it. But I will say, when it came to Victor, like he had some pretty gruesome death moments. Like the first guy he killed, like his face just like exploded in the
Yeah.
helmet, and I was like, okay, that
Hmm.
that was interesting to look at least,
Yeah.
for better or for worse. And I was like, I can't believe this. Also, I couldn't move past the fact that they didn't put trousers on Ben. He was naked.
He
I'm
was.
like, the
Which
thing
then
is
goes back
naked.
to my theory that maybe that's why he got angry when he asked how they fuck. He doesn't have anything down there.
Oh
It
my
is it is
god.
like a mountain. It is just rocky and slope. There's
And the
nothing.
thing, the thing is supposed to be like this like unstoppable force, right? And he's taken down like the moment. Like he even has this moment where he's like, "You know what? This is what I do. I just go into battle and I smash things and I'm the muscle of the group." And he's taken down immediately by Victor. And he even says
Hmm.
like the it's clobbering time or whatever his like
Yeah, his
catchphrase
classic
is.
phrase, which in this movie just does not fit tonally at all. Like dialogue
Mm-mm.
like that. That's why the
Yeah.
first movie, even though I did give it a lower rating, it is the highest of my three, spoiler alert, because it does kind of understand the silly nature of these stories. And it's trying to be silly. Here,
Mhm.
it's not it's trying its best to be anything but silly, but they still need to get those little homages in to where it's like it doesn't make sense
Sure.
at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then like the entire I was watching the end with James, and I was like, it is a shame that they are spending the entire last like 5 minutes of this movie setting up a second movie that is just never coming. They're
Yeah,
like,
and
"Yeah, you
as
have to give us a facility and we're going to work on our own because we learned that we worked best as a team. Guys, what should our team name be?" And I was just like, Okay.
Yeah, and that's why when I read that they changed the ending a bunch of times, it makes sense. And why the director hates this film so much, it makes sense.
Yeah.
This is very much your Joss Whedon, Zack Snyder Justice League thing, except there was no director's cut waiting in the wings.
That's what I was like, are
Ugh,
we gonna
we're
get
never gonna get
a
it.
what's his name?
A Josh Trank
Josh
cut? No,
a
no,
Josh
no, Josh.
Trank director's cut? Josh
Nah, I
Trank's
don't think we will.
Fantastic Four? That'd be
I don't think we will.
I honestly that'd be funny and I would watch that if it came out
Maybe.
just to see
And that's not
what could have
to
been.
excuse Josh Trank, because what he might have been going for might have been even worse or just as bad as this anyway. And if a lot of the stuff on set that Kate Mara has said she didn't like was a very toxic environment, if he had to
Mm.
do with that too, then there's no excuse for that either. But I do feel like I would have liked to see him have more control in general than he did on this movie, because I think it's just a big pile of muddy shite. So Kelsey, are you going even lower on this rating? Are you going higher? Where are you settling for Fantastic Four 2015?
I gave it the lowest I could go, which is a 1 out of 10.
Ah, so did I. You thought I was
Boom.
fooling you. No, I was not fooling you. I think it's pretty bad. When I first saw it, I gave it a 2 out of 10 just for the novelty of watching it on my phone in the middle of Hawaii after a nice big old Denny's breakfast at 4 a.m. But since then, I've lost all the nostalgia for it, and I think it's just unbearable. Anyway, that's that. That's the Fantastic Four, all three of them. The first one the best, second one's the next best, and the third one is the least best. As no one could have ever not predicted. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's had a rough go. But the question I want to ask you now, you don't have to
Okay.
like go through Google or anything. Off the top of your head, do you have any fan castings you would love to see now that you know these characters for the Fantastic Four slash Doctor Doom, if they should, which they are making a Fantastic Four movie, but if they should not have assembled their cast yet, and Marvel happens to be watching this, like, are there any actors you want to consider? Because I'll start for one. I think Michael B. Jordan, if he wasn't Killmonger, deserves like a real shot in this role, because I think he's just a great
Mm,
actor. But he's off the table now,
sure.
so any thoughts? And don't say the obvious. If you say Emily Blunt and John Krasinski, you're basic. So
No,
what are you
no,
thinking?
no.
Anyone in particular?
Oh my God, you're really putting me on the spot
Yeah,
here.
I'm sorry.
I'm just like I'm going with like the first. I'm literally going with like the first people like that come to mind. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because I adore her so much. But I the first person that came to mind for Sue Storm was Emma Watson,
She'd be good. She'd be
because
real
I feel
good.
like she would be very good at like the smart stuff and
Yeah,
all that. Johnny Storm. Oh my God. Yeah. I think that Michael B. Jordan has kind of aged out of this character. Like I
yeah.
think he's very like mature now, and I think he has moved on to bigger and better stuff than just being like the douchey womanizer
Hmm.
role. I
Yeah.
think. Um,
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't know. It probably requires more thought. Maybe we'll come to it at another point. But
for
um,
Reed Richards, I again don't know why. First person that came to mind, Dev Patel.
that would be great. That would be a great casting. Kelsey, you should be a casting director. Um, yeah,
Yeah, I
I'm
just
trying to
cast
think.
myself in things.
I'm just trying to look at like recent movies and be like, who's been in them? um, I don't know. Anthony Ramos would be fun as something. Actually,
Hmm.
he's gonna be in something in the MCU. Never mind.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah. I forget
Oh, okay.
what, but um, yeah, I really don't know. John Cena would be funny as the thing. He's got that
Mm.
hulking presence. If you want to go that route, or you could do the like Weasley guy who becomes a big rock guy. That'd be interesting. Uh, yeah, I don't know. This is something we can toy around and maybe revisit. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of interesting options for good castings. I mean, John Boyega still not in the MCU either. From Star Wars, he'd be a good choice for somewhere down the line in something. So maybe give him one of those roles, maybe the Thing. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, if you have any suggestions, here we go, audience, interact with us. Tell us. down below who you would like to see as the Fantastic Four and or Doctor Doom. Yeah, so that's all I have about Fantastic Four. Yeah, it's a bunch of messy movies. Some are better than others, but ultimately, I'm not a huge fan. I hope they do a good job. Whoever they get to direct it, since John Watts stepped out from the director's chair, I'm excited to see who they get for this movie, and I hope it's good. That's all I'm hoping.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at like actors now.
It's tough. Maybe.
Oh my God! You know who I think would actually make a great Johnny Storm?
Yeah,
Dylan O'Brien.
he would. There you go, Kelsey.
I think
you're really.
he would probably do it
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah. So.
But now I feel like I need to pick someone for Ben. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Say your little fancy
I'll
words.
tease us for next week while Kelsey's looking up her Ben. So next week we are talking about Miss Marvel episode 1. It's coming. Believe it or not, this is the week. We're getting Miss Marvel, and then we'll be talking about the first episode or 2. I don't know how many are dropping. Spoiler reviews. We'll be talking about it, and then later on the month we'll do more Miss Marvel, and eventually get an MCU trivia match. I can confirm one of the matches right now, right here. We are getting the long anticipated return of Corey Ross, who had who was the first person to go 1-0 after Kelsey, after beating Stacy, I believe. Wait, maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know.
No, you're right.
Yeah, and then we are going to see him face off against JD, who is now 1-1, and Corey sent out the challenge for JD, but it's going to be fun to see if JD can get a second win, or if Corey will get a second win. If Corey gets a second win, he'll be undefeated, and then he'll have to play one more match before he gets a number 1 contender, which would be pretty freaking cool. But if JD wins, maybe he'd be on the path toward a number 1 contender. And of course, there are other competitors lurking in the wings. The other match will either be a rookie match or will be a match between 2 undefeated players as well. I'm just trying to schedule that out, but I think I'm going to get some good heavy hitters for that one as well. But yeah, the road to the title is upon us in MCU trivia. And someone's going to be coming for that belt. Whether they will get it or not, I'm not sure. But also next month in July, we have a triple threat match, which is going to happen with Noah, Carrie, and Chad, which we've been teasing everywhere. But yeah, the JD versus Corey will be the headliner for this next episode in June, so stay tuned for that. You can find me Dylan_Randazzo, Twitter and Letterboxd. Just finished a retrospective. A video is going up very, very soon of my top 10 movies of 2012. But if you want to see a little preview of that and read all my reviews on Letterboxd for all those movies, I put a lot of hard time and work into those written reviews because I don't do enough written reviews. It's all video, and I wanted to branch out and do some written stuff because that's where my passion started. But yeah, videos will be coming. Kelsey, where can they find you? What's up with you?
You can find me on Instagram at Kelsey A. Kilpatrick. You can follow me on TikTok at Cause13. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel. I promise things are coming. I promise. Yeah. Also, nice. I'm not married to this idea, but I did pick someone for Ben. All right, and I said I'm not married to it, but I can see it. I'm hearing it, and I think I'm liking it. Shia LaBeouf.
I don't like it.
Okay, that's fine.
No, it's just
I said, I don't love it either, but I saw his face and I was like,
him. Yeah, no, he'd be good, but I just
what's wrong with Shia LaBeouf?
Oh, Kelsey's got a fun research project to do this weekend. Anyway.
No, I regret saying that name now. No, I'm sorry. Okay, is he canceled or something?
Not canceled, I don't think. I don't know the depths and extents of it all, but
okay.
I don't know. Maybe he's not. Maybe I'm getting him confused with someone else. Anyway, Shia LaBeouf, if you want to do a Marvel movie, reach out to Kevin Feige. Maybe he'll put you in one. That's it. That was the Fantastic Four. We'll see you next week. See y'all later. Bye.